potential to succeed at senior world and Olympic games. So basically, GB Taekwondo initially had separate cadet and junior squads, although the format has changed slightly in the last kind of few years, with GB Taekwondo basically opting to streamline the program, and they introduced the GB Taekwondo Development Squad, which is 13 to 18-year-olds who will train together. But in terms of the numbers, it's a smaller squad than when there was a separate cadet and junior program. The GB Taekwondo Development Squad have training camps on average probably twice a month at the National Training Centre in Manchester. The camps are usually 2 to 3 days long and will consist of probably 2 Taekwondo training sessions per day, and will also include S&C sessions as well as educational workshops. So that might include sessions on sports psychology, maybe nutrition, or how to make weight safely. So again, it's adding that kind of more professional, elite kind of level of training, and obviously giving the younger athletes an idea of kind of what to expect if they do kind of eventually move into the full-time program. Again, within these camps, there will be things like video analysis as well. There'll be athlete reviews, regular test match stays, and the athletes will also undergo periodic testing. So that might be strength testing, or again, they'll take measurements on heights and weight and that kind of thing. It gives the coaches kind of projects what kind of potential weight category they may move into as a senior athlete. I think somebody got their microphone on.
Yes, sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Sorry, didn't realize you muted. Yeah, so basically the GB Taekwondo development pathway is obviously introducing the kind of young athletes to that kind of lifestyle and the different systems and things that they will be doing on a kind of regular basis, on a daily basis, if they were to transition into the full-time academy. Yeah, so like I said, there'll be maybe twice a week twice a month for those sessions. British Taekwondo now currently oversee the cadet squad as well as the under-21 squad, and they're responsible for selections and operations for the cadet and under-21 European and World Championships teams. GB Taekwondo high performance coaches Steve Jennings and Nelson Miller have recently become more involved in that program. So again, I think with their involvement, we're going to see even kind of better results coming through from there. Again, if anybody's got any questions at the end, if you're not quite sure the difference between British Taekwondo and GB Taekwondo, again, I can explain that at the end. So yeah, GB Taekwondo hold annual trials for its development squad, which are now known as the Talent Draft. There have been a couple of previous names before. Some of the current graduates of the program include Bradley Sinden, Aaliyah Powell, Caden Cunningham, and Rebecca McGowan, who I'm sure most of you will have probably heard of. Another previous initiative which followed a similar format was called Fighting Chance, which discovered double Olympic medalist Taylor Mohammed, as well as athletes from a variety of different combat sports backgrounds, including kickboxing, ITF, and karate. Some of the successful transitions include Lauren Williams, Damon Sampson, Andrew Deere, Krista McNeish, and Maddie Moores. And again, I think at the time that was quite a revolutionary kind of way of thinking in terms of trying to get athletes from different combat sports to transition over. Obviously, the talent pool in the UK is pretty small. You know, we don't have a huge number of athletes, available to us for selections. So I think one of the ideas was looking at different styles, different athletes who performed well to a high level, and maybe kickboxing or something like that. Seeing if they could transition into kind of Olympic Taekwondo. And obviously we've seen success, particularly like I said with players like Robin Williams, Olympic medalist, world European medalist, obviously Damon Sampson. So that was, I think, quite a revolutionary thing at the time, but it's something that is still kind of offered within the UK. And in terms of the format for the talent draft, is normally done in 2 phases. So there'll be phase 1, which athletes will be invited down to a test match day. Now this will be normally just 1 or 2 test matches, and this will be done in front of a panel of judges. So will normally be performance director Gary Hall, along with maybe 4 or 5 other GB coaches. And the aim is obviously to identify athletes with specific attributes or qualities who they feel could successfully transition into the full-time academy and ultimately go on to succeed in Taekwondo at a senior level. So as I mentioned, the phase 1 will be a test match day. In the past, this would be done as a kind of competition format, so the matches would be scored using KADO or KPMP. In more recent years, what they do is they just get them to basically have a match, but there will be no score. So the idea is to get the athletes to try and demonstrate what they can do rather than trying to just be protective or cautious and just maybe try and win match. So you really want athletes to showcase their talents and their abilities. So nowadays that isn't scored, but it's it is done in a match situation with a referee who will obviously oversee the match. If successful in phase 1, the athletes will be invited back to a boot camp, which will be normally a 2-day training camp in Manchester. And again, this will follow a similar format to a regular training GB Taekwondo training development camp. So 2 days. And again, at the end of that, if they are successful, they will then be invited back to join the development squad for the next next 12 months. Obviously, there will be periodic reviews, as I mentioned earlier, within that. So again, I think in terms of success, it's definitely something that's worked for Great Britain. Obviously, Nigeria is a lot bigger than the UK, so I think it's 3.8 times the size. So maybe that's something that you would maybe have to look at doing maybe on a regional basis if it was something you would consider doing. So maybe have regional squads as well as a national squad. Maybe that kind of format could be implemented. And the last thing I was just going to cover was Santos asked me to mention maybe a little bit about funding and how that works. So obviously the full-time athletes in Great Britain, if they're in the national squad, they are fully funded, or most of them will be fully funded. They'll have an APA athlete payments scheme. But the cadet and junior athletes are generally self-funded. Whilst we have received a little bit of funding in the past towards major championships, maybe world championships for a couple of athletes. Again, it would maybe only be partial funding towards the cost of that competition. We've received that maybe through GB Taekwondo occasionally, or maybe some lottery-backed or government-backed schemes. Sports Aid was one that I think we received funding from. Well, like I said, the vast majority of cadet and junior athletes are self-funded, and the athlete or the parent has to foot the cost for the competition, competition fees or travel costs, that kind of thing. In the past, we've raised funds through the club. We've done various things like sponsored bungee jumps or raffles within the club like that. We've also directly approached local businesses to generate funding for athletes. There's a UK-based Taekwondo equipment supplier who offered to provide some funding for a couple of athletes. Again, there was some other foundation which we found ourselves. We kind of sourced different kind of charities or foundations within kind of the area that would look to support athletes. But most of the funding has come from kind of either the parents or the club. So that's basically it. Anyway, I hope you could understand me. You could understand the accent. And that was basically all I was really going to cover today. But if anyone has any questions, please let me know.
And of course, that was so how do you say, comprehensive, Nick. I mean, and I ran with you on your journey and the storyline, and it made sense right from the logic for the children all the way
Yeah,
up to the point where there's logic, for a complete athlete who's not just a sportsman but a complete human being. And I'm sure that there are a couple of questions, lots of questions from the
yeah,
athletes and myself as well. But we'll just move on to Coach Taju so he can
yeah.
also speak a bit. And then we take questions for both coaches after Coach Taju's presentation. So Monira, over to you and Coach Taju.
Perfect. Thank you, Santos.
Thank you. If we don't have Monira, then Amar, please go ahead and take Coach Taju.
All right, I'm on standby. Coach Taju, please, can you èmi ni màá ṣe interpretation fún yín, so tẹ́ bá ti ready mo wà pẹ̀lú yín. Coach Taju, ẹ jọ̀ọ́ ṣé ẹ gbọ́ nǹkan tí mò ń sọ?
Mo gbọ́.
Okay,
Mo ti ready.
ẹ máa bẹ̀rẹ̀ pẹ̀lú introduction yín, tẹ́ máa present
Okay.
points yín.
Okay, mi ni Coach Taju Atada from Côte d'Ivoire. Mi ni alákọ̀ọ́kọ́ ní coach Africa tó jẹ́ gold medal Olympic ní Rio 2016. Voilà.
Okay, sir, ẹ jọ̀ọ́ màá máa ṣe interpretation yẹn tẹ́yìn lọ díẹ̀díẹ̀ so that màá máa ṣe interpretation yẹn fáwọn èèyàn. Okay, so Taju just started and gave his introduction, and he said that he gave his name is Coach Taju Atada and is Africa's first coach to get to the top of the Olympic podium by winning the gold medal at the Olympics in Taekwondo at the Rio Games in 2016. Ẹ tẹ̀síwájú, sir.
Okay, donc mo sì tún jẹ́ World Cup ìtàsájẹ ọ̀sàpọ̀ nínú Taekwondo. Donc lónìí experience wa bí ọ̀nà tá a gbà bá a ṣe ṣe náà ni a sọ fún yín lónìí tí bá a ṣe lè ṣe tí Taekwondo Africa tí ó fi lọ síwájú bíi tàwọn ìbò.
Okay, so he said that he has had lots and lots of accolades in the sport of Taekwondo, and his experience is top notch, and he has done a lot in the art of Taekwondo. So he's going to be sharing his experience as to how to replicate the performance that they've done at Ivory Coast on the continental level, so as to have more African countries perform to the level that Ivory Coast have performed at the world stage. More sir.
Okay, kí ni kéèsì Áfíríkà tí wọ́n fẹ́ mọ̀ tí wọ́n fẹ́ kí tọ́ wọn sọ́nà níbo ṣe pé coach Santos wọ́n sọ fún mi pé bọ́n kí n wálẹ̀ torí pé àwọn ò bí àwọn nǹkan bíi Taekwondo léèrè mo ní òkè mo fara mọ́ kí n fi tọ́ wọn síwájú. Mo ń gbọ́ èrò àwọn question tí wọ́n fẹ́ tí àwọn Taekwondo Nàìjíríà kí ni wọ́n fẹ́ mọ̀ ní Taekwondo kí n tí mo bá lè sọ ń bẹ̀ kí n sọ fún wọn kí wọ́n gbọ́.
Okay, sir, kí n tó ṣe àtúnyì ọ̀rọ̀ tẹ̀sẹ̀ sọ́nsìn mo sáré fẹ́ sọ fún yín pé ẹ máa ní bíi 15 minutes láti ṣe presentation, so ẹ lè kọ́kọ́ ṣe presentation yín náà tẹ́ bá ti wá ṣe tán àwọn ìbéèrè táwọn yẹn bá wá ní àwa gbà so pẹ̀lú tí coach alákọ̀ọ́kọ́ àṣẹ méjì papọ̀.
Ok, donc bí mo ṣe sọ lẹ́ẹ̀kan èmi ni coach Taju Atada 7 black belts Taekwondo Kukui 1 best coach Côte d'Ivoire láti ìgbà tí wọ́n ti bẹ̀rẹ̀. Èmi ni mo jẹ́ alákọ̀ọ́kọ́ tí mo jẹ́ world cup world competition àti Olympic. Ní ìsìn àwa wà tí pé àwa là ń kọ́ àwọn ọmọ ní taekwondo nílẹ̀ ní national team.
Okay, so he said that according to what when Santos reached out to him to come and share his experience and give his insight as to his path and his journey in Taekwondo, he introduced himself as a 7th Dan black belt, and as of right now, there are a lot more focus as to grassroots development. I mean, that is raising Taekwondo athletes and champions from ground up, and that is the path as to which they are in right now. My sir.
Okay. Mo ti ṣe presentation tán torí pé tá a bá fẹ́ máa sọ presentation la máa sọ àníṣe òkúkú ìtẹ́ ìmọ̀nù.
Okay, sir. My hand over padà sí fún Santos nísìnyí, so máa take question. Mo gbọ́ gẹ́gẹ́ bí nǹkan tó sọ lóòótọ́ náà, ó máa le tá bá ní ká máa ṣe presentation, so káwọn èèyàn kúkú send the questions on so that ẹ kàn máa dáhùn tó bá yín. So mo gbà padà fún Santos nísìnyí tó bá yín bẹ́ẹ̀ tó bá yín sọ yẹn máa tú fún yín ní Yorùbá. So
Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone. And Nick, just to give you context and everyone else who doesn't understand Yoruba, Tadru said he would rather just take the questions as opposed to present, so he can, directly respond to the intricate issues that some athletes and coaches on this conversation might specifically have for him. So we'll go straight to Q&As. If you have any questions, please leave it in the chat box. I know that there were some other ones sent via WhatsApp, but please leave it in the chat box here. And we'll start with Nick. First question to Nick, and then we'll move straight to Coach Taju as well. I had that question sent directly. I was wondering if it could be pasted here, but I will just take it. And the question you have here, Nick, is what constraints do you think your club and GB Taekwondo met on the way to becoming the powerhouse that it was? What you showed us the direction, but surely there were some, challenges. There were, things along the line that you had to deal with. Please just run us through this to at least, motivate us to know that we are also going to face those challenges along the line.
So I'll just speak briefly about Michael personally, and then I can tell you a little bit about GB Taekwondo as well. So, like I said, we started off working from leisure centres and school halls. So again, we were kind of limited in terms of equipment and things as well. So again, we would have maybe some kick paddles, kick shields, but we certainly didn't have mats or anything like that. So again, we kind of built those things up when we were kind of lucky enough to move into our full-time training centre again. I think we noticed a kind of a big improvement in the kind of standards. We were able to put more sessions on. Obviously, we had better facilities. We did some funding to raise money to get PSS. And again, obviously that gave our athletes more experience using the system, knowing how to score on a system. Again, previously when we'd maybe been to competitions and there's athletes who are more experienced on the electronic scoring systems, again, that can show. So having the opportunity to kind of practice a little bit on those types of systems again was really beneficial. I think in terms of development in the UK, one of the things I would say which has kind of held us back in kind of recent years is probably the number of kind of athletes maybe in competitions or weight divisions. So maybe a few years ago you could enter an open and there may be kind of 25 people in the category, so you could possibly have 4 or 5 matches in a competition. What we found was because there were a lot of competitions being hosted throughout the UK, the numbers were much smaller, so you'd maybe be going into straight finals or semi-finals. So in terms of trying to get the experience for some athletes, we basically had to start kind of taking them, the more experienced, more talented ones, we had to start taking them to bigger competitions and G1s, and just because they weren't getting the challenge maybe at some of the competitions that were here in the UK. So I'd say that's still probably a factor you know, that maybe held us back. In terms of GB Taekwondo, again, obviously, they started off in, you know, kind of part-time premises also. Obviously, they kind of got the lottery funding and, you know, they've you know, received, you know, obviously large amounts of money, which have helped them kind of, you know, be able to, you know, develop one of the best probably training facilities in, you know, in the world. So again, that's been a huge bonus. But even if you go back to kind of, you know, maybe 15 years ago, you know, GB Taekwondo were nowhere near as successful as they are now. You know, or have been in the last kind of few years. So yeah, I hope that helps.
No, please go on, Nick.
Yeah, so sorry, can you just ask me, say what the question was again, please, Santos, about challenges with GB Taekwondo, was it?
Yeah. I mean, and you gave us a few of them already. You know, when you mentioned, you know, temporary location, you mentioned numbers dropping, you know, for participation, and you know,
yeah, again, I think like I mentioned earlier on when we were talking about talent transfer was a scheme that was brought in by GB Taekwondo to target athletes who could potentially switch from different styles, and again, a lot of that came down to the fact that the limited number of participants in the UK. You know, it is small compared to other countries, so I'd say that's probably one of the biggest things holding us back. Maybe the talent pool. I think when GB Taekwondo took the decision to kind of hand the cadets back to British Taekwondo, I think that had a negative effect in terms of the development. So when I look back to, say, when I had a few athletes in the program, you know, there was some really strong athletes who came through that particular squad. And then I think since GB Taekwondo weren't as involved in the cadet team, again, I think we saw the standard drop off a little bit. Obviously, that wasn't helped by COVID, where obviously people weren't able to train properly or compete. So yeah, I think they were some of the kind of the probably bigger challenges. But I think now that certainly some of the GB coaches are involved again with the kind of cadet team, I think that'll start to kind of bring through the talent again. So again, hopefully that will be a positive move from GB Taekwondo there.
Yeah, that's very helpful context, Nick. So helpful context, and it gives us a different, you know, as Nigerians, it gives us visibility of what an utopia can be and should be. And in my head, I hear opportunities. You know, if a concern for a country like Nigeria that has so many young people, you know, such a young population, there's so much potential in there. You know, there shouldn't or will never be a problem of having less than 25 people in each weight category if you put your structures in the right places as a country here. So I see our potential. I will move to Kotaju, and Amma, you please take the question I think there's a question already in there before we move back to Nick. Amma, over to you for Kotaju's question.
Okay, Coach Taju, wọ́n béèrè pé báwo lẹ ṣe rí owó lò, considering pé owó tán dẹ̀ máa fún yín náà kò ní jẹ́ owó tó pọ̀, báwo lẹ wá rí lò tẹ́ fi wá fún àwọn athletes in particularly Cisse àti Ruth Gbagbe, báwo lẹ rí owó yẹn lò tẹ́ fi fún wọn ní àwọn exposure tó need kó tó lè dé level tó dé yẹn? Because a mọ̀ pé gẹ́gẹ́ bíi pé Africa tá wà a ní owó lọ títí bẹ́yẹn, world ẹ̀ kí n release owó lọ títí bẹ́yẹn fáwọn developing athletes. So báwo lẹ rí àwọn owó yẹn, báwo lẹ dẹ̀ rí lò tẹ́ fi make best pẹ̀lú ẹ̀ tí tẹ́ rí ṣe bẹ́yẹn? Hello sir, Coach Taju, ẹ̀yin lẹ ní ìbéèrè yẹn o.
No, his mic is muted. So just...
Okay. Ṣé ẹ gbọ́? Hello?
Bẹ́ẹ̀ni sir, bẹ́ẹ̀ni sir.
Okay. Ṣé wàá pé kó tó di pé a jẹ Olympic medal, àwọn population bí wọ́n ṣe ń wo taekwondo bí ìgbà wípé taekwondo ti àwọn ọmọ ìranù ni, àwọn tí wọ́n máa jà tí wọ́n máa náyàn, àwọn èèyàn kọ́ra sí taekwondo tó jẹ́ bí taekwondo tó jẹ́ bí ẹ̀sẹ̀ tó sá jẹ́ bí nǹkan agbára àwọn èèyàn kọ́ra sí ní Áfíríkà náà ní tá a wá ṣe ni pé àwa mọ̀ pé a lè débẹ̀ ibi tá a lè dé nítorí pé tẹ́lẹ̀tẹ́lẹ̀ wọn ò fowó sí gọ́fìnmẹ̀ntì ò fowó sí wọn ò kọ́ra sí bí tá a ti mọ̀ football ni wọ́n kọ́ra sí àmọ́ kí la wá ṣe ní tá a ṣe ni wípé a jókòó àti president federation wípé a fẹ́ jẹ Olympic medal láti jẹ Olympic medal kò sí owó bó ni a sì lè ṣe tá a lè ṣe ni wípé gbogbo àwọn ìlú tó jẹ́ bí àwọn ìlú kékékéké tẹ́ ẹ̀ máa ń pè lọ́dọ̀ yín city àkọ́kọ́ lọ fi taekwondo àwọn níbẹ̀ kí àwọn èèyàn fi máa ti ń jẹ́ taekwondo kí wọ́n fi yára sí taekwondo èdè náà kọ́ àwọn èèyàn sá kọ́ra sí taekwondo èkejì láti rí àwọn athlete.
ẹjọ sáré lórí ìtẹ̀sẹ̀
Okay.
sàn.
Okay.
Okay, so the coach was responding and he said that initially the sport of taekwondo was seen as a sport that serious people, as a sport for vagabonds that like to fight and cause trouble. So it was not a sport that had a lot of reception in the country. So they knew that they needed perform. The federation, president, and the rest of the federation came together, and then they set a goal to produce a medal in the Olympic Games. So once that goal was set, they knew the next thing was how do they go about making that goal a reality. So the first thing they did was to change the orientation of the citizens about the sport, and in doing that, what they did was they took the sport down from the federation level down to what you can call city level. So the sport was taken to on a city by city basis to change the perception of the people of to the sport. Samuel pẹ̀lú.
Nígbà tá a wá ṣe kinní ọ̀hún ó fi hàn pé àwọn èèyàn wá kọ́ra sí i àmọ́ ní gbogbo sùkúù a wà mú àwọn black belt ní gbogbo sùkúù nígbà tí a kó àwọn ọmọ lọ gbogbo sùkúù tí àwọn population àwọn parent wọ́n wá mọ̀tí ń jẹ́ taekwondo wọ́n wá faramọ́ lẹ́yìn ìgbà náà la wá bẹ̀rẹ̀ iṣẹ́ àmọ́ gouvernement bí mo ṣe ń sọ gouvernement wọn ò fowó sí torí pé wọn ò kọ́ra sí ààrẹ football ni wọ́n kọ́ra sí àmọ́ nígbà tá a bẹ̀rẹ̀ kínní nǹkan àní mú athlete tó pọ̀ lọ torí pé a lówó athlete mẹ́rin náà péré a ṣe national champion a ṣe akọ̀dé gbogbo eléyìí àwọn mẹ́rin tá a mú wípé èèyàn mẹ́rin la mú obìnrin méjì ọkùnrin méjì la kàrà sí àwọn eléyìí pẹ̀lú owó tá a ní torí pé táwọn sọ pé a mú athlete pípọ̀ owó ò lè tó àmọ́ àwọn méjèèjì tá obìnrin méjì ọkùnrin méjì àwọn obìnrin tá a mú rit àti arábìnrin kan tí a ń gbé Mẹ́mínà ọkùnrin tá a mú Sise àti Zoku àwọn eléyìí la kọ́kọ́ fi bẹ̀rẹ̀ owó tá a ní nígbà tá a mọ̀ pé owó ọ̀pọ̀ a sì ṣe national champion a ṣe àwọn eléyìí la wá mú tá à ń ṣe entraînement èmi mò ń ṣe entraînement fún wa láàárọ̀ lọ́sàn-án nígbà tí a bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí máa jẹ ìgbà náà ní gọ́vànà rí i pé kí ní nǹkan dáadáa mà ní Africa Games àjẹ Africa Championship àjẹ World Cup àṣà ń jẹ lọ bá a ṣe ń jẹ lọ báwọn ní gómìnà wa ń kọra sí àwọn tó jẹ́ bíi kọ́mpìnì àwọn náà wà ń kọra sí kó tó di wípé kíní wa mú gbogbo èèyàn wá kọra sí níìsì nígbà tí a lọ sí Olympic Games tá a dé wọ́n wá kọra sí tí mo fẹ́ ni wípé lónìí bá a ṣe sọ yìí taekwondo àti football ni wọ́n mọ̀ ní coach ni wọ́n fowó sí tí àwọn Áfíríkà tí wọ́n bá fẹ́ ṣe kíni wọ́n máa mú athlete tó pọ̀ pé àfi pé ká kó gbogbo wọn lọ gbogbo wọn tẹ̀ ń kó lọ kí ẹ ṣe pé gbogbo ni wọ́n jẹ àwọn bíi méjì mẹ́ta tẹ́ ẹ bá rí àwọn eléyìí lẹ́kọ̀ọ́kọ́ kó síwájú táwọn máa jẹ táwọn eléyìí bá ti ń jẹ tí àwọn gómìnà bá ti ń rí wọ́n máa ṣe tí wọ́n pè ní lọ́dọ̀ tiwa confiance wọ́n gba títí federation àmọ́ tí wọ́n bá ń lọ káwọn àwọn athlete náà wá mọ̀ pé ní táwọn ń ṣe yìí àwọn làwọn ń ṣe fún o kì í ṣe pé àwọn ń ṣe fún federation àbí àwọn ń ṣe fún ìlú àwọn gangan ni wọ́n ń ṣe fún torí pé ṣíṣe iléèwé ńlá ló wà àmọ́ ó ní fún ọdún méjì ọ̀pá iléèwé tì fọdún méjì pé òun ṣe o ibi tóun fẹ́ dèrè rit ọ̀pá iléèwé tì àmọ́ ó mú tírénì bí iṣẹ́ tẹ́tẹ́ bá ti rí àwọn athlete báwọn tí kíní bá wú wọn tí ó ṣe pé àwọn athlete á máa bẹ̀ pé kí wọ́n wá sí tírénì àwọn eléyìí wo lè ṣe nǹkan kan àwọn tó ṣe pé fúnra ara wọn ti mọ̀ pé kíní à ń fẹ́ débẹ̀ kó sì rí coach tó ṣe pé coach náà fẹ́ débẹ̀ translate fún ọ náà kó tó di pé.
Okay, so the right and point, and to start with, you mentioned that after the perception had been changed at the grassroots and local level, then the next thing they did was to try to look out for athletes that fit into the description of the types of athletes that they wanted. So they did not take a large contingent. They did not do national championships. They did not make it a very big thing because they knew that they do not have the resources to fund something of that size. So they started with 4 athletes, 2 males, 2 females. The females was Ruth and one other female, and Cisse and Zico, I think if I pronounced that properly. So those 4 were the ones that they started with, and he was the one that was in charge of the training. So he trains with them in the mornings and in the evenings, if I remember that properly. Then that was the first thing, the first point he mentioned. And the second, and then from then, when they started going out and then they started performing, they went to the African Games or the African Championships and all of that. And then gradually, the government started to take notice of the sport, companies started to take notice of the sport, and then gradually, funding started to come in gradually. So then he also made another point, very vital, after the other ones he mentioned, that the athletes too had to be, they were seen to be very, very interested in the arts. When I say interested, I mean they set their own goals. They were very invested emotionally and passion-wise into that goal that was set. So it was not like they were being dragged or forced. They wanted to. So, and because of that, it was very easy. And gave example that Cisse was in university then, and he left school for 2 years to focus on training, while Ruth did not leave school, but she took training as seriously as anyone could ever. And because of that amount of dedication they put into the sport and into the training, it was very easy for them for the results of their efforts to be shown and to come out and come to pass. So that was where it stopped. So coach, I need to take a question in me from coach Alakoko so that I don't normally down.
Okay. Okay.
So over to Coach Nick. I see you already have about 2-3 questions already down there. But I think that you can merge them into one response, because I see Walton asking, what kind of, programs did you have for your athletes beside competitions, for especially the ones with great potentials? And then I see Bamidele asking, under the purview of seeking brand endorsements, are there some specific peculiarities to watch out for? Do you think you can take that?
Yeah, no
those
problem.
questions together?
So I'll say probably some of the main things that we did in terms of things outside of the regular sessions and programs. We'll be hosting regular training camps. So work quite closely with Andrew Deere and a few of the other former GB athletes. So we would put on regular training camps from my gym. We'd invite folks from over the UK and Ireland maybe would come over and work with us, and we'd maybe do do 2 or 3 day camps quite regularly. So the standard within those camps was pretty high. We'd also have GB Taekwondo development athletes from other clubs as well join us in those sessions. So again, that was beneficial. We ran those quite successfully for a few years. Other things that I would say which made a big difference would be the introduction of S&C training. So we worked quite closely with physios and strength and conditioning coaches, and we bring them in to again deliver workshops and work with the athletes, and specific athletes would have their own specific S&C program which they would follow outside of our regular training. So they would do that in their own time. So again, I think that was something that was really kind of beneficial when we started doing that. In terms of kind of trying to get endorsements and that kind of thing, like I said, we basically approached various local businesses directly. So I directly approached them, or maybe parents would also do their own kind of approaches. But I think when we had athletes who'd had certain success, so there may be multiple national champion and maybe won gold at the Dutch Open, or medalled at the President's Cup. When we got some kind of results like that, it was a little bit easier for those athletes funding. Like I said, it wasn't a huge amount, but there was there were things we could put in place. We were able to cover some of the costs, certainly for some of the G1 competitions. So I'd say it's just probably hard work. Make a list, go through the kind of businesses that you feel may be interested in sponsoring an athlete. But I think obviously once they have a little bit more in terms of kind of credentials, medal success, it's probably a little bit easier then to attract more sponsors.
That's so helpful, Coach Nick. I mean, and again, you've given us, this diverse insight that, would not usually be our reality, but then opens our eyes to some opportunities that we may not have been seeing, but we're right there in front of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And because we're almost running out of time, we'll be able to take one more question for Coach Taju. And I think, the last question for Nick after Coach Taju, and a round-up question for Coach Taju as well. But Amma, please, could you take Coach Taju on his present question, and then we'll have one last one for Coach Nick and Pastor.
All right. So the question for Coach Taju was, somebody was asking, what are the main challenges that the coach, that's Coach Taju, foresees for any Nigerian athletes or coach that has the Olympic dream, and what advice he has for the person or for that athlete or coach? So, Coach, wọ́n béèrè pé kí làwọn challenges tẹ́ wò tẹ́ rí pé ó lè wá sáyé fún athlete tàbí coach ọmọ Nàìjíríà tó yẹ pé ó ní dream láti dé Olympics. So kí ni àwọn challenges tẹ́ rí pé ó lè bá pàdé, kí dẹ̀ ni àwọn àmọ̀ràn tẹ́ ní fẹ́ nìyẹn? Either athlete o, coach o, tó bá ní àwọn goals yẹn, kí làwọn ìṣòro tẹ́ rí pé ó lè pàdé, kí dẹ̀ làwọn ọ̀nà àbáyọ tẹ́ rò bóyá ó lè ṣe tó lè fi surmount àwọn challenges.
Okay. Alákọ̀ọ́kọ́ náà, ẹni tó bá mọ̀ pé òun fẹ́ ṣe kíní tó fẹ́ dé kíní, òun ni alákọ̀ọ́kọ́ náà yóò bá rẹ̀ sọ̀rọ̀ pé ṣé ó fẹ́ ṣe, torí pé ọ̀nà yìí ó jìn ó sì ṣòro, torí pé tí ó bá fẹ́ bí pé òun ó di Olympic, kọ́ mọ̀ pé gbogbo tí bẹ ní lẹ́gbẹ̀lẹ́gbẹ̀ kọ́ máa wo léyìn, kó wo ibi tó ń fẹ́ dé, torí pé taekwondo la pè é, àwọn ìbẹ̀ tí wọ́n máa tí wọn ò ní fẹ́ kó débẹ̀, nígbà pé àwọn gan fẹ́ débẹ̀ wò jẹ́ kó débẹ̀.
Ẹjọ́ sáré kí n tó gbà. Okay, so the coach said that to start with, for whoever that knows that they are aiming at the Olympics, they first have to be clear and understand that it's a long an arduous journey because it's a deep path. It's a path that they are going to have to be very, very invested in. They are going to have to give their all. They are going to have to be very focused and not pay attention to the distractions besides, because there are lots of distractions that would try to divert them from their aim. And there might also be some people that will stop them, that will try to stop them from getting to where they want to, because they also have aims like that. So, Coach Mwapoli.
Ok, torí pé kiri kìí ṣiṣẹ́ kéke Olympic la pè é, torí pé kó tó di pé yóò dé Olympic kọ́ mọ̀ pé inú state tóun wà wọ́n yẹ pé òun ni wọ́n mọ̀ pé yes òun ní ṣe train dáadáa, òun ni yóò sì fi training sí alákọ̀ọ́kọ́ gbogbo tí ọba ṣe eléyìí. Second, kọ́ mọ̀ pé nínú Africa òun ni yóò jẹ́ champion, Africa champion. Èyí ò lè dìde báwọn kó sì di African champion tó bá ṣe pé fúnra ara rẹ̀ ó mọ̀ pé ibi tóun fẹ́ dèrè, torí pé tó bá jẹ́ African champion kò jẹ́ nǹkan kan, wọ́n kàn ṣe pé ó bẹ̀rẹ̀ ni kó tó di pé GP sẹ́rípọ̀nà jìn GP world champion kó tó di pé àwọn bóun ti pé president cup ọ̀nà jìn kọ́ mọ̀ pé kíní tóun fẹ́ ṣe kì í ṣe pé ńgbà tóun bá ṣe lónìí tí ọ̀bà rí result yọ pati, kó sì mọ̀ pé training tóun ṣe ọgbọ́n ní wákàtí mẹ́sàn-án, okay 9 àbí wákàtí mẹ́sàn-án ní training, mẹ́ta láàárọ̀, mẹ́ta lọ́sàn-án, mẹ́ta lálẹ́.
Okay, so the coach just said now that once the person has that clarity of purpose, then he has to understand also that just because he gave an example or a pathway as to what the chart is going to look like, you first have to be the undisputed champion in your city, your locality, then it steps up further to the continental level, and then like a person should not get to the continental level and feel comfortable and think that okay, they are arrived. They should know that that is just the continuation of the journey, and then from there they go on to, I mean, it continues up to the world level. And then he said just now also that the amount of dedication of training time is, in his opinion, so great that it might require a person giving as much as 9 hours of training, 3 hours in the morning, 3 afternoon, 3 at night. So he's just trying to give an insight as to how much person will be required to sacrifice for that goal that they have. Okay, Coach Ejo Emma Eli Saribawa, summarize the response because time is in law. Tebalibawa summarize it so that Mali.
Okay, kí wọ́n mọ̀ pé tí gbogbo àwọn athlete Africa gbọ́ mọ̀ ní pé difficulty ti wà ní Africa àti tàwọn ìbò kìí ṣe kankan náà. Okay, ó yẹ kí wọ́n mẹ́lẹ̀ torí pé tí wọ́n ṣe nílùú èbò lọ́hùn, tí àwọn bá sọ pé àwọn máa ṣe bákan náà ní Africa kò lè kìí ṣe kankan náà. Second, ètò mo fẹ́ sọ fún mi wípé kí wọ́n mọ̀ gbogbo àwọn Africa kí wọ́n sì parapọ̀ tí wọ́n fi máa ṣe train bí àwọn èbò ṣe ń ṣéwù tí wọ́n fi mara, torí pé iná ló fi jẹ́ agbára títí wọ́n pé àwọn máa parapọ̀ tí wọ́n máa pè training camp. Àwọn Africa mélòó ni wọ́n ṣe training camp? Wọ́n sì ní àwọn athlete tó ní experience, wọ́n ní àwọn pro tó ní experience, oníkálukú ń ṣe training níbi tó wà, eléyìí ò lè mú. Ó yẹ pé kí wọ́n mọ̀ pé láti ìṣe lọ pé gbogbo Africa taekwondo kan náà kú ní gbogbo ẹ̀, ó kàn sí pé experience ló jẹ́ tí tó yàtọ̀ sí láàrin, torí pé bẹ́ẹ̀mi ṣe training ní àyìn tí ń bẹ Nàìjíríà lè má ṣe training bẹ́ẹ̀, ètí ó lè má ṣe training bákan náà, ètò wà ní Morocco gbogbo ẹ̀. Ó yẹ pé kí wọ́n mọ̀ pé ó yẹ pé àwọn Africa wọ́n máa ṣe training camp kí àwọn coach wọ́n fi mara wọn, kí àwọn athlete wọ́n fi mara wọn, kí wọ́n fi mọ ibi tí à ń lọ. Ọ̀rọ̀ pọ̀ nígbà tí pé time ti lọ, mo rò pé atman ń gbà mí. Okay. Hello?
Yes, I'm going, Coach.
Okay. Translate lè kí àsìkò bá tún bẹ. Okay. Nǹkan jẹ́ kókó nù. tó pé àsìkò sí èyí tó ń dùn mí ni pé nígbà tí èsì pé French and try láti sọ Yorùbá ni nǹkan pọ̀. Ok ìwé rẹ̀ alákànṣe díẹ̀ lókun ni omi lọ́pọ̀ ọ̀pọ̀. Ok ẹ translate fún wa. Allô? Il n'y a pas de réseau, bien pas. Allô?
Hello, translator, please continue.
Ok, I can continue. Allô?
No, coach, one second.
I'm a translate this if we are scheduled there.
Okay.
Okay, so the summary of what Coach Tajo has said is that we should, for those that are going to be having the Olympic dream, you would not consider you losing one major event as the end of everything. There are a couple of events that would come that are very big events, Grand Prix, all of them, and then you participating in one of them and you not doing very well does not mean that you should just give up on everything. You could start from the smaller events, go to G1, G2, smaller events, and then as you keep competing in those little ones and then make your points, gradually you begin to climb up the ladder. Thank you.
Yeah, and so we were supposed to end in the next 2 minutes, right? And we
Can
would
I ask
maybe
a question,
just
please,
add.
Santos?
Yes,
no
This
time.
Coach Malik, this
just
Coach
please just
Malik
hold on.
speaking.
Please hold on. We would be ending by 9 p.m. But I mean, we were meant to end by 9 p.m. But of course, I mean, I see that Coach Malik already had a question typed in there for Nick. And so we'll take a short response from Nick and a short roundup from Coach Taju, and then we'll finalize. And if possible, I would reach out to both speakers to also get some extra insights that can be written and shared to the larger group. So yes, Coach Malik, are you going ahead with the question you typed there? Or is it a different one?
Yeah, no, this is a different one to Coach Taju. The other one was for Coach Nick, but this one is for Coach Taju.
Okay, so let Coach Nick take the first one, and then Coach Taju will take the second one.
Okay, so I should wait after you have taken his, then I can ask my question, right?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So, Coach Nick, if possible, in 2 minutes, you just tell us, what does a coach need as a prerequisite before embarking on talent hunt and development, like you so eloquently spoke about earlier?
Yeah, so just briefly, obviously, if you've got a good understanding of the sport and the attributes required for an athlete to be successful, obviously that's pretty important. Although I know we've had a development manager who came from cricket and also works in like elite cricket, so nothing to do with martial arts, and they were in kind of like a talent spotting role as well. So you don't necessarily need a background in martial arts. You can see spot talent, based on kind of physical attributes or maybe a mental attribute. I know one of the things they often look for in the trials for the drafts is an X factor. So they're looking for an athlete to demonstrate something, whether it's something physical or maybe excuse me, or maybe it's the mental ability to never give up or something like that. But they're looking for an X factor. Oh, that helps.
Thank you so much, Nick, for making that in record time. And Coach Malik, your question for Coach Taju, Abiodun is going to translate to Coach Taju. Yes.
Okay, I can go on now, right?
Yes, please ask.
Okay, mine is just a simple question. Like you talk about athletes who has a dream for Olympism. For instance, now if an athlete has that dream, what are the key things that athlete has to have to be sure that he's really going to achieve what he wants. That's just what I want, because he has been there, he actually knows.
Yes, over to you, Abiodun.
Okay, Coach Taju. So question tí wọ́n béèrè ni pé tí athlete tó bá fẹ́ tó bá wù ú láti lọ Olympics, kí ni ohun tó yẹ kó ṣe gangan, kí lẹ rò pé ó yẹ kí athlete yẹn máa ṣe gangan?
Wípé athlete ní ìsìn ó fẹ́ lọ sí Olympic tàbí pé ó ṣe àdéhùn pé òun fẹ́ lọ sí Olympic àbí.
Bẹ́ẹ̀ni.
Ok. Àkọ́kọ́ náà kó nígbàgbọ́ fúnra ara rẹ̀. Ok, kó nígbàgbọ́ fúnra rẹ̀ pé òun lè débẹ̀. Kóòchì rẹ̀ kó má ta kóòchì rẹ̀ lẹ́nu, kó má sì tako kóòchì. Ìdí kóòchì bá ní kó ṣe ni kó ṣe, kó díjú kó ṣe. Torí pé kóòchì ọmọ ibi tí ó fẹ́ pé kó dé. Àmọ́ athlete tí ó bá ti tẹríba, difficult ni. Lẹ́yìn ìgbà náà kó mú tírénì bí iṣẹ́, kó má pé òun lè ń bọ̀ bá santrement tó bá ṣe tírénì lónìí kò ní ṣe lọ́la. No. Program tí tóun pẹ̀lú coach rẹ̀ bá jọ ṣe, kó sì mú program kó mú ṣẹ. Wọ́n má fò wípé nígbà tí ó ṣe pé báyìí ni a ṣe báyìí. No. Kó gbára rẹ̀ gbọ́ èní coach rẹ̀, kó sì máa gbọ́rọ̀ sí coach lẹ́nu, kó má ta coach lẹ́nu. Ẹ̀kẹta, program tí a bá fi rẹ̀ pé n táwọn ó ṣe ni wọ́n sì ṣe program tí débi pé ebi tí bá lọ competition tí a bá ṣe gbogbo competition tí a bá ṣe tí a máa ti ń dé báyìí òun pẹ̀lú coach wọ́n sì jókòó wọ́n jọ pé a ṣe báyìí bí báyìí ó yẹ pé ká ṣe báyìí ó sì má jẹun ṣe. Ẹ̀kẹta tí mo rí ń bẹ̀ ni pé ọgbọ́n máa kọ́gbọ́n ni. Nígbà tí ọdún mẹ́ta ni mo fi tèmi ṣiṣẹ́ tí wọ́n mọ̀ pẹ́ẹ́pẹ́ tí ṣiṣẹ́ kò jẹ́ national champion rí o, pọ̀ kà mú báwọn ni. Nígbà mo rí i pé ó kéne ó ń bẹ lágbárí rẹ̀ ó sáfẹ́ ṣe determination, ó ní tí wọ́n pè ní determination. Àwọn athlete ń bẹ wọ́n kà mú òun ni nígbà pé mo rí i pé ó ní determination ní ọ̀wá jẹ́ kí athlete lọ síbi tó fà kiri. Kì í ṣe pé kí athlete mọ ẹsẹ̀ láti bí à ń ṣe ẹsẹ̀ náà, kì í ṣe lẹ́yìn determination. Èyí tí mo fẹ́ sọ ni pé tí athlete òun pẹ̀lú coach rẹ̀ tó bá ṣe pé ọdún mẹ́rin ni wọ́n ṣe, kí wọ́n ṣe ọdún mẹ́rin òun pẹ̀lú coach rẹ̀ ni wọ́n jọ máa ṣiṣẹ́. Kọ́ mọ̀ pé nígbà tó ń ṣe ń bí báyìí díẹ̀ òun lọ sí bí báyìí. Tí àwọn coach bá ti ń pọ̀ lórí àwọn athlete ò lè lọ síwájú. Ẹ translate fún wọn.
Okay, sir. So, Coach Malik, his response are in different phases. First, he said one has to believe in their coach, listen to him or her, and don't argue with your coach. Secondly, take the training as if it is a job. Do all programs given judiciously without arguments with the coach. Then, after competitions, for example, the athletes should try to do a recap of the outing with his or her coach. Then he also mentioned that determination is a very key factor. If the athlete is determined, the athlete will get there. And lastly, he mentioned that athletes switching coaches too much is a challenge, it's a problem to the athlete. And if it's going to be 3 years, if it's going to be 4 years, that the athlete would stick to a particular coach and learn so much from him or her, the athlete should do that. So the process of jumping coaches and switching coaches in between those periods, the athletes would get so many things and then get confused at some point. So the athlete should most likely stick to his or her coach for that period. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Abiodun, and thank you so much, everyone. We've gone 6 minutes longer than we should have, so I apologize for taking that much time. I mean, it was such an interesting session, and I didn't even want it to end because I was beginning to think I was going to come back and compete with all these newfound insights, so to speak. Yeah, but I guess I'll just remain here with my pot belly. It was great to have everyone here. And just to finalize, if you could turn your videos on for just 5 seconds, we'll take a group photo. No pressure if you can't. So let's just do that right away and then we end the meeting. So everyone just turn on your video briefly and you're going to get a message that's requesting for your videos to join. It was such a beautiful session, I have to say, man. So once it takes your photo, you can turn off your video and we can create an amazing group photo.
I'm waiting to snap me.
We've gotten ourselves in there. I guess we're done. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for making our time.
Thank you, Santos. Thanks for having us.
Goodbye, everyone.